80% of Maldivian land barely clears 1 meter above sea level, placing this paradise on a knife's edge. This nation of 1,192 coral islands, with an average ground level of just 1.5 meters, relies on the ocean for life. But that same ocean is its greatest threat. Scientists confirm global sea levels creep up by 3 to 5 millimeters every single year. Think of it as your bathtub filling just enough to make you uneasy, but for an entire country. This isn't some distant future scenario, it's the reality unfolding now. Since 2006, sea levels have risen at 3.6 millimeters per year, rapidly accelerating the danger for these vulnerable islands. UN experts predict the Maldives could be uninhabitable by 2050, forcing over 500,000 citizens to become climate refugees. In a desperate bid for survival, the government has already purchased land in Fiji, a plan B for an entire nation ready to relocate. Their capital, Malé, one of the world's most densely populated cities, packs over 210,000 people onto just 8 square kilometers. It's almost unfathomable to picture your entire life, your culture, your history, slowly being swallowed by the sea. This haven for 1.7 million annual tourists might soon become a stark warning, as a mere half-meter sea level rise would submerge almost all its land. Even the coral reefs, the architects of these islands over 60 million years, are now themselves threatened, with 60% experiencing bleaching events. Freshwater sources are turning saline, and by 2007, 97% of islands reported water shortages during dry seasons. It's just grim how fast this all is. These islands started as volcanoes, erupting and sinking for over 60 million years, plunging down to depths of 2,000 meters. Then, over millennia, tiny coral polyps began their monumental work, building upwards, layer upon layer, forming massive calcium carbonate structures. Imagine building a wall 50 meters thick, not with bricks, but with creatures smaller than a grain of sand, creating natural breakwaters. But how fast do they grow? A mere 10 millimeters annually, less than half an inch. Now consider this. The ocean is rising 3.6 millimeters per year. Evolution's defense system is being outpaced, leaving these atolls, the Maldives' very foundation, sinking faster than they can grow. The entire archipelago is 26 natural atolls, strung out over 871 kilometers, a fragile chain. For 8,000 years, sand accretion and erosion found a balance, but that equilibrium has been shattered. More frequent intense storms now batter these low-lying lands. If these islands were human, they'd be about the height of a tall refrigerator, standing in rising floodwaters. This geological marvel, shaped over millions of years by these tiny organisms, faces an unprecedented challenge. Just 0.8 degrees of global warming is enough to tip the scales, as the polyps built upwards, adding their skeletons to the foundation, a slow, painstaking process. Their survival depends on this intricate, delicate structure. It's a testament to time, but its vulnerability is stark. Global sea levels are inching up, about 3.6 millimeters every year, and it's shaping up to be a serious problem. We can actually measure why this is happening. A big reason is thermal expansion. When ocean water heats up, its molecules spread out, making the whole volume bigger. This accounts for nearly 40% of the sea level rise we're seeing. Think about it. The ocean has soaked up over 90% of the extra heat from human activity since the 70s. That's a staggering amount of energy. Then there's the melting ice. Glaciers and massive ice sheets, particularly in Greenland and Antarctica, are shrinking faster than ever. Greenland alone is losing an average of 280 billion tons of ice each year, and all that meltwater is heading straight for the ocean. Antarctica isn't far behind, shedding around 150 billion tons annually. Together, these ice losses add about 1.8 millimeters to sea levels each year. What's really wild is that the rate of sea level rise has actually doubled since the 20th century, going from 1.4 millimeters per year to our current 3.6 millimeters. Projections are even more alarming, showing a potential rise of 0.3 to 1.0 meters by the year 2100. For the Maldives, this isn't just a threat, it's existential. With 80% of its landmass barely a meter above sea level, This island nation is staring directly at that rising tide. Absurd, really. Even slight global temperature increases have a huge, disproportionate impact on places like this. A 1.5 degrees Celsius rise means a world drastically reshaped. The choices we make, miles away, are directly deciding the future of these island paradises. In the Maldives, coral reefs can absorb up to 97% of incoming wave energy, a natural defensive behavior that forms the island's primary protector. Before billions spent on concrete seawalls, these atolls had their own living fortresses, complex biological structures built by over 200 species of hard corals, forming the very skeleton of these low-lying islands. During powerful storms, these natural breakwaters can reduce wave height by an astonishing 84%, protection that would otherwise cost fortunes to replicate. Unlike static structures, healthy reefs are dynamic, growing vertically by 1 to 20 millimeters per year, adapting to changing conditions, a feat of biological resilience. Parrotfish are crucial, grazing on corals and helping to produce up to a ton of pristine white sand annually, per fish. These vibrant ecosystems support over 1,100 species of fish and marine life, which is like your apartment building, housing over 1,000 types of tenants. The Maldives economy, with tourism contributing 28% of its GDP, relies heavily on these thriving reefs. Without this protective buffer, island erosion rates could surge by over 300%, threatening vital landmass. Historically, healthy coral reefs could keep pace with sea level rise rates up to 10 millimeters per year. Maldivian atolls are built on vast coral skeletons accumulated over millions of years, forming solid layers up to 2 kilometers thick. These reefs are nurseries for 25% of all marine species, despite covering less than 0.1% of the ocean floor. Reef-building corals are mineral architects, extracting 10 to 100 grams of calcium carbonate per square meter annually from seawater, slowly building the foundations of paradise. What a system! What an intricate natural design, like evolution saying, "Here's your best defense." Marine heat waves push beyond the sensory abilities of coral to adapt, causing 60% of Maldivian corals to bleach in 2016 alone. That's a statistic few know, and it paints a grim picture for these vital structures. Most don't realize how sensitive corals are to temperature. These tiny polyps, the living architects of the reefs, thrive in an incredibly narrow thermal range, typically 25 to 29 degrees Celsius. Just 1 degree beyond that, even sustained for a short time, triggers extreme stress. Imagine your own body overheating by just 1 degree. Uncomfortable, right? For corals, it's catastrophic. When stressed, they eject their colorful symbiotic algae, the zooxanthellae. This expulsion is like a houseplant suddenly rejecting sunlight. The coral begins to starve. The skeleton, once protected, becomes visible, stark white. Without their energy source, 90% of corals can die within weeks. The 2016 marine heatwave proved to be a particularly devastating event, initiating a death spiral for vast sections of Maldivian coral ecosystems. While some corals can recover, severe bleaching often leads to widespread mortality, leaving behind brittle calcium carbonate skeletons across what were once vibrant reefs. Live coral grows very slowly, about half a centimeter to 2 centimeters per year, yet large sections can erode much faster, losing 1 to 5 centimeters annually. It's a slow erosion, a silent undoing. Human activities like plastic pollution and overfishing further inhibit any chance of recovery, creating a habitat where these stressed reefs simply cannot regenerate. It's like trying to build a house with crumbling bricks. Scientists predict that if global temperatures rise by just 1.5 degrees Celsius, 70 to 90% of coral reefs globally could disappear. "15 meters of coastline gone in just 5 years. That's the stark reality for islands like those in the South Area Atoll, their very shapes being rewritten. This isn't some slow, gradual shift. It's an erosion that gnaws at the foundations of these places. When dead coral reefs can no longer stand guard, the ocean's full fury breaks ashore, with storm surges now reaching far deeper, sweeping away homes and crucial infrastructure. Take the aftermath of a 2007 storm, which submerged a staggering 10% of one island's land. Scientists are warning that if we do nothing, over 80% of the Maldives could be uninhabitable by 2050. How can a nation so tied to its land even begin to face that? Sand, the very stuff these islands are made of, is constantly on the move, its shape altered by waves and currents, sometimes overnight. This natural locomotion of sediment means islands aren't just shrinking, they're actively migrating, their forms changing dramatically. And it's not just the coastlines vanishing. Rising sea levels are forcing salt water into freshwater reserves, contaminating the drinking water for almost every atoll. This salinization cripples local agriculture, making an already tough life even more precarious. The ocean's current, no longer buffered by the protective embrace of healthy reefs, relentlessly attacks the shore. Some islands are reporting losses of up to 5 meters of land every single year, a chilling annual subtraction. On places like Himafushi, makeshift seawalls stand as desperate, ultimately futile barriers. Homes built just decades ago now teeter precariously, exposed to the relentless tide. The essential sediment produced by living corals, which naturally rebuilds beaches, is now gone. Over 97% of Maldivian islands face severe freshwater stress. This is the silent crisis, a threat lurking beneath the surface. Freshwater lenses, vital to island life, are thin layers of rain atop saltwater, typically only 10 to 60 meters thick. As sea levels rise, that surrounding saltwater relentlessly pushes inward, shrinking these precious reserves. Wells that once offered life-giving water now yield only brackish, undrinkable fluid. On many islands, over 70% are now unsafe. This salinization also devastates agriculture. Coconut palms, breadfruit, and taro, staple crops for 300,000 residents, struggle to survive. The government resorts to expensive desalination, a process that costs 10 times more than well water. These plants, often fossil fuel powered, ironically worsen climate change. Distributing desalinated water across scattered islands is a logistical nightmare, with some islands receiving deliveries only weekly. Limited clean freshwater access breeds significant health risks. 1/3 of island populations are vulnerable to waterborne diseases. Without major technological investment, most islands will lose their natural freshwater lenses within 50 years. Terrestrial ecosystems reliant on this fragile habitat face collapse. Scientists predict this silent threat could render islands uninhabitable long before they are physically submerged. Saltwater contaminates groundwater, rendering land unusable for vital crops. Increasingly erratic rainfall compromises traditional rainwater harvesting. The capital, Malé, now gets all its drinking water from desalination. How long can a paradise survive without its own fresh water? It's like trying to quench a thirst with the ocean itself. "10% of the Maldivian economy hinges on fishing, a traditional way of life now threatened." This stat reminds us that traditional hunting strategy, fishing, remains a cornerstone of the Maldivian economy, but climate change now threatens this ancient practice directly. Over the past decade, local fishermen have reported a staggering 30% decline in tuna catches. This isn't just a statistic, it's a direct blow to their livelihoods and the nation's food security. Think about your pantry. For Maldivians, the ocean is their pantry. But that pantry is changing. Warming waters, now up to 20% hotter in some areas, force pelagic fish like tuna to migrate to cooler, deeper zones. Imagine a fisherman's boat designed for the shallows, now struggling to reach its changing hunting grounds. Meanwhile, increased CO2 absorption makes oceans 30% more acidic than pre-industrial times. This acidity directly threatens shelled creatures, forming the very base of the marine food web, like plankton and mollusks. Even local reef fish are feeling the heat. Their metabolic rates are spiking by up to 20% in warmer waters, impacting growth and reproduction. It's like being stuck in a sauna that also makes it hard to breathe. Coral reefs, vital nurseries for juvenile fish and safe havens for a quarter of all marine species, are degrading at an alarming rate. Less coral means fewer fish. Some fishermen try to adapt, investing in larger vessels or modern sonar, but these costly upgrades are out of reach for most small-scale operations. This is a race to the bottom, a race they can't afford to lose. Warmer, more acidic waters also favor invaders. Jellyfish blooms and harmful algae are outcompeting native fish for resources. For over 2,500 years, a rich oral tradition has woven the Maldivian people into the fabric of their land and sea, a cultural DNA passed down through generations. Their identity, deeply rooted in island life, where 99% of the Maldives is ocean, shapes their every social behavior. Maldivian fishermen, for example, can identify over 200 types of local fish, a knowledge seemingly etched in their bones. That's 200 distinct species. Meanwhile, I struggle with my grocery list. Every inhabited island historically cultivated its own dialect, subtle variations born from centuries of geographic isolation, like tiny, unique linguistic bubbles. Traditional dhonie boats, built for over 800 years using ancient techniques, are more than just vessels. They are living artifacts, carrying history on their wooden hulls. Family names often reveal the island of origin, a marker of deep rootedness, with some lineages tracing back 10 to 15 generations on a single island. They traditionally collected up to 100 liters of rainwater per person daily for domestic use, a remarkable feat of self-sufficiency. 100 liters. For context, that's a lot of water. Coral reefs are not just natural barriers, they are the ocean's vibrant cities, teeming with millions of marine inhabitants. In fact, 60% of Maldivian homes were traditionally built from coral, forging a direct, physical connection to the reef's very structure. Their ancient navigational knowledge, honed for millennia, was so precise it could pinpoint locations to within 1 degree of latitude. Imagine navigating by stars to that accuracy. My phone's GPS still struggles in a parking garage. In 1987, President Mamoun Gayoom stood before the UN, one of the first world leaders to declare his island nation endangered by rising seas. This wasn't some distant sci-fi worry. It was a stark reality 22 years before most global powers truly understood the crisis. That year, addressing the General Assembly, he famously proclaimed the Maldives an endangered nation. He possessed a chilling certainty that climbing sea levels threatened to sound the death knell for his home. By 2008, that foresight led to a concrete, albeit desperate plan. The Maldivian government announced they were looking to buy land abroad, in places like India or Sri Lanka, to protect their 520,000 citizens. Imagine an entire nation preparing for a preemptive evacuation. The initial price tag? A staggering $1.5 billion, which was nearly 28% of their entire national GDP back then. It was a powerful statement of their determination and problem solving, a true bid for survival. Then came that unforgettable underwater cabinet meeting in 2009. Ministers literally put on scuba gear to sign a climate appeal, 4 meters below the waves, a visually arresting demonstration of their vulnerability. This wasn't just for show, it was a calculated move to grab global attention, sparking media coverage in over 120 countries. It amplified their plea, and alongside 39 other small island developing states, they formed a significant bloc at the UN. Even as they begged for global action, the Maldives, contributing a minuscule amount to global emissions, bore a disproportionate burden. Their emissions are a tiny speck compared to the vast global picture. Still, the fight persisted, pushing for commitments like the 26% reduction targets we now see in agreements like the Paris Accord. $300 million. That's what it cost to start Holhomaway, a project to build land where none existed. The Maldives undertook this monumental task, essentially creating 67% more land, a measure they called defensive behavior against the ocean's steady push. Construction began in 1997, expanding the usable area from 1.8 square kilometers to 4, and now over 50,000 people live there. That's a 122% increase in habitable space. Trying to keep pace feels like emptying a bathtub with a teaspoon, while someone else keeps the tap running, doesn't it? This island, a monument to human cleverness, came with a steep price for nature. Dredging that much land wiped out crucial coral ecosystems. Beyond new islands, Many low-lying atolls are now ringed with concrete seawalls, some 3 meters high, a physical barrier against rising seas and surging storms. For islands like Funadu, battered by erosion from all sides and losing ground, these walls are their only defense. It's an incredible effort to build higher against the sea. But we have to ask, at what long-term expense? Then there are beach nourishment projects, meant to combat erosion by pumping millions of cubic meters of sand onto shorelines. It's like trying to shovel against a hurricane. The sustainability of these engineered solutions is a huge question mark, demanding constant upkeep and adaptation to our changing climate. Protecting the entire nation could cost billions, which is more than the Maldives' entire GDP for several years. Yes, that's a real number. It really makes you wonder how long these human-built defenses can realistically hold back the relentless march of geological time. Since 1987, Maldivian presidents have taken their nation's survival plea to the UN General Assembly and COP climate conferences over a dozen times, a relentless diplomat push. It's a testament to their commitment. In 2009, President Mohammed Nasheed famously held an underwater cabinet meeting, signing a plea for global action against climate change. This dramatic stunt drew worldwide attention, directly appealing to leaders from 195 nations at climate negotiations. As Nasheed stated, "We are literally drowning. If we can't save the Maldives today, you can't save your cities tomorrow." Think about convincing your family to pick a restaurant. These leaders are trying to get 195 nations to save their entire country. And here's the kicker. Despite contributing less than 0.003% to global greenhouse gas emissions, the Maldives faces 100% of the existential threat from it. Their carbon footprint is minuscule, yet they shoulder so much of the global advocacy burden. In 2019, the Maldives spearheaded a UN resolution on the human rights impacts of climate change, adopted by 40 nations, demanding greater protection. While major emitters drag their feet, the Maldives aims for net zero by 2030 itself. This global dialogue is their lifeline. How does a nation so small, contributing so little to a problem, end up leading the fight against it? By 2100, projections suggest 80% of the Maldives could be uninhabitable, a terrifying reality that spurred early policy discussions. As far back as 2008, the nation began a serious, problem-solving dialogue about the eventual forced migration of its entire population to secure their future. Think about needing to literally buy a backup country because your home is dissolving into the sea. This isn't science fiction, it's a policy born of desperation. The cost of relocating over 500,000 people could reach hundreds of billions of dollars. President Nasheed openly named India, Sri Lanka, and Australia as potential new homes, anticipating his people becoming the world's first climate refugees. Imagine the negotiations, securing sovereign land and rights for an entire nation, demanding complex agreements with host countries. Moving across town is stressful. Try packing up a culture, history, and national identity to relocate thousands of kilometers away. While we debate recycling a plastic bottle, an entire nation is planning its grand forced exodus. The Maldivian strategy, though drastic, underscores the ultimate consequence of climate inaction. A paradise lost, a culture displaced. Their diplomats explored options in at least 5 nations, seeking new territory for 523,000 citizens. That's more people than live in Oakland, California. This envisioned sovereign wealth fund would require billions, a massive investment for a country of just over 500,000. It's not just a land transfer, it's uprooting 2,500 years of culture, identity, and a profound ancestral connection to the ocean. Finding a new habitat meant searching for elevated land, stable politics, and cultural compatibility for a unique way of life, all the more critical when the average elevation is a mere 1.5 meters. When you talk about relocating over 500,000 people, the sheer scale is almost hard to grasp. This map shows the potential habitats considered for a nation facing an existential threat. Australia, with its vast resources, was an option, but those strict immigration laws were a major roadblock for Maldivians. India, so close at just 700 kilometers, seemed geographically sensible, but it's already managing a population of 1.4 billion. Sri Lanka offered some cultural connection, but its own economic struggles made taking in so many a daunting thought. Acquiring suitable land anywhere would cost hundreds of millions, possibly billions of US dollars, an astronomical sum for the Maldives. The requirements for a new habitat were rigorous: strong infrastructure, access to education and healthcare, and plenty of jobs for everyone. Moving this many people, essentially the entire population of Miami, means tackling unbelievable logistical hurdles. Think about transporting entire communities, their most cherished possessions, and keeping social bonds intact across immense distances and unfamiliar cultures. The psychological impact of losing their identity and being forced to move will be profound, a collective sorrow passed down through generations. Adapting to a new habitat will demand entirely new survival strategies, a complete departure from their ocean-centric lives. Some forecasts say parts of the Maldives could be unlivable in 30 to 50 years, making a plan much more urgent. Negotiating citizenship, land rights, and cultural independence for an entire displaced population is an incredibly complex diplomatic challenge. This is essentially a desperate search for a permanent safe habitat to ensure their very existence. Their situation is a stark warning for other low-lying islands, a global test of climate-driven migration. "80% of Maldivians want to stay right where they are, but the grim reality of relocation is a constant shadow. This island nation, once the very picture of paradise, is now fighting for its existence. Think about the idea of losing not just your land, but your entire ancestral history. For Maldivians, this isn't some abstract thought experiment, it's an impending tidal wave. Their identity is deeply woven into island names, the coral reefs, and stories passed down through generations, some stretching back over 500 years. Imagine your community bonds, the very fabric of your social structure, just dissolving because you're forced to leave. The psychological toll of living with this constant existential dread is immense, a trauma that's been studied for decades. Children here are growing up knowing their home could literally vanish within their lifetime. What kind of future can you even begin to build when your foundation might just sink? Preserving a unique cultural heritage without a physical homeland presents an unprecedented challenge. Oral traditions, ancient craft skills, shared histories, all of it is at risk of vanishing. This displacement could very well create the world's first true climate refugees on a national scale. Evolution itself seems to be throwing them a curveball. Current international law offers absolutely no specific protection for populations displaced by climate change, leaving a profound legal and humanitarian void. The debate in the Maldives rages: build massive seawalls to adapt, or actually move? This question splits the nation into emotionally charged camps. It's not just about losing territory, it's about losing a nation's very soul. Can a people truly migrate without losing their essence? Seven out of 10 young Maldivians are dealing with climate anxiety every single day. That's a pretty heavy burden for any generation, but especially for those whose entire future is tied to a nation literally dissolving around them. These kids are trying to plan careers and families in a country that might not be here in the way we know it. With over 40% of the population under 25, they're facing an impossible choice: put down roots on land that's actively disappearing, or leave their ancestral home behind forever. They dream of stability, of growing old on their islands, but the ocean could swallow them whole in less than a century. Raising a family here means preparing children for a reality their own grandparents never had to imagine: becoming climate refugees as soon as 2050. It's a complete rewiring of what generational planning even means. In fact, schools are already teaching resilience, with over 90% of kids learning about sea level rise before they even turn 10. The mental weight of this is immense. 7 in 10 young Maldivians feel eco-grief daily. Their urge to protect their home, even as they understand it's fleeting. This constant conflict is creating serious mental health challenges. Think about it. Planning a 30-year mortgage for a house that could be underwater in 15. That's the financial tightrope for so many. But here's the amazing part. Their drive to innovate is still burning bright. Maldivian youth are already developing clever solutions, like floating gardens and better water filters. Some envision entire communities built on stilts or new land raised above the waves. Places like Hulhu Malay show this determined spirit in action. By 2100, scientists predict global sea levels could swell by up to 2 meters, a stark warning for our entire planet, not just a Maldivian crisis. Imagine 90% of the world's coral species critically endangered by 2050, a preview of the Maldives' ecosystem collapse. Since 1950, our industrial greenhouse gas emissions, now 80% of the total, have overwhelmed natural limits. This has profound global conservation implications. The Maldives' 340,000 people face displacement, but millions more in low-lying coastal areas worldwide will suffer the same fate. The economic toll of doing nothing is almost unimaginable. $1.2 trillion globally by 2050 just from coastal damage, a figure exceeding Australia's entire GDP. International accords like the Paris Agreement with 195 signatories are essential, but individual action matters too. Folks in developed nations pump out an average of 10 tons of CO2 each year. Cutting that footprint directly helps places like the Maldives. Creepy feedback loops are already kicking in, like melting permafrost releasing methane, a gas 25 times more potent than CO2. Yet shifting to renewables like solar, which have plummeted tenfold in cost since 2010, presents a real economic pathway to preserving our habitats. The choices we make today shape the world for the 4 billion young people who will call Earth home by 2050. The UN estimates 200 million climate refugees by then, with the Maldives as the vanguard. Atmospheric CO2 levels hit 419 parts per million in 2021, a peak not seen in 800,000 years, fundamentally altering Earth's biological systems. Globally, over 1 million species are at risk of extinction, unraveling our planet's complex web of life. Mangrove reforestation can slash wave energy by half. A truly radical adaptation. Beyond hard concrete walls, these living barriers naturally evolve to fight rising seas. Vertical farms are another biological marvel, using 95% less water than traditional agriculture, securing our food as freshwater dwindles. It's ingenious problem solving. Human-designed reefs are boosting coral growth by 20 to 30%, rebuilding vital underwater ecosystems. It turns out evolution still has plenty of surprises. This drive for innovation is everywhere, from floating cities to resilient architecture. Consider ocean-based modular islands, designed to house 20,000 people and simply rise with the water. Picture your home gracefully adjusting to the tides. These structures even include artificial reefs, increasing marine biodiversity by 30%. And it's not just about floating away. Coastal defenses are getting a serious upgrade. New seawalls can now handle storm surges up to 3 meters higher than today's. On land, architecture is adapting too. Some islands are raising homes by 1.5 meters, preparing for more frequent flooding. Smart water management is essential. Desalination plants now supply 80% of drinking water in Malé, easing the strain on limited freshwater. The renewable energy switch is also accelerating. Over 30 Maldivian islands get half their electricity from solar power, a huge win for cutting emissions. Normally, habitat adaptation takes millennia. We're trying to fast-track that in decades. These islands are overhauling their infrastructure in 50 years, a feat most developed nations take 200 years to achieve. Even cultural heritage is part of the plan. Scientists are poring over data, watching time lapses of growth and adaptation. The big question remains, what does it truly mean to thrive, not just survive, on a sinking planet? 500,000 people speak Divehi, a language that's been around for more than 1,500 years. This ancient tongue ensures Maldivian culture keeps moving forward, a legacy that won't be washed away by sinking land. Their society, built on family ties stronger than rising tides, lets them face displacement with a remarkable collective resilience. Picture your entire community, generations deep, confronting the same existential threat. Their social behavior is truly something to behold. In 2020, the the traditional Doni boat-building skill was honored by UNESCO, preserving a unique craft for global heritage. This highlights their legacy, a living culture of skill passed down. Over 90% literacy rates prepare Maldivians for whatever the future holds, fostering incredible adaptability. Their voices resonate internationally, a constant, urgent reminder of climate change's impact on 50 vulnerable island nations. This is more than just geography. It's about a proud people, their unique traditions, and a spirit that transcends physical boundaries. The red field on their flag signifies bravery, a social behavior of fortitude tested daily. Here's something to think about. While islands may vanish, the Maldivian spirit, their deep cultural roots stretching back 800 years on the same soil, is truly indelible. Their identity is woven into the coral reefs, the lagoons, the very seafaring knowledge carried in Divehi, elements that cannot be simply packed away. They remind us that our habitat is as much our shared human spirit as it is the earth beneath our feet. This enduring legacy, a vibrant tapestry of customs and resilience, will travel with them, proving that a nation's true strength lies not in its land, but in its people. By the year 2100, 80% of the Maldives might just disappear. That's not just a prediction, it's a screaming headline about our impact on this planet. See, the Maldives sinking isn't just about islands going underwater. It's a flashing warning sign for everyone, showing how vulnerable we all are to a shifting climate. This existential threat hangs over 80 different small island nations and their populations. Scientists are saying sea levels could climb as much as a meter by the century's end. That sounds small, but it spells disaster. This is more than an environmental mess, it's a human rights nightmare, potentially forcing over 500,000 Maldivians out of their homes. Our supposed problem solving has to mean cutting global carbon emissions, and fast. Honestly, we're still dragging our feet on this. The planet chugs through over 100 million barrels of oil every single day. That's just not going to cut it. The Maldives story really forces you to ask, what are we leaving behind? A legacy of just standing by, letting trillions in damages pile up and causing untold human misery. Think about your own ancestral home, beautiful for thousands of years, gone in your lifetime. Evolution took 300 million years to perfect coral reefs. It didn't plan for human myopia. This crisis isn't confined to islands. It's about entire ecosystems, vital biodiversity, and the planet's delicate equilibrium. If you think we need to embrace global conservation for places like the Maldives, securing their future for millennia, hit subscribe. The choices we're making right now, from our individual carbon footprints to major policy shifts, will decide the Maldives' fate. So what's your mark going to be?